Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forge Film Room, where we take presentations, projects, and enrollment systems into the tape room to see how they actually work. Today's game film is my full rehearsal for a Slate Presents webinar called Stop Copy Pasting, Start Relating. The session looks at 3 related record projects in Slate: a tour guide autoresponder, a high school visit follow-up, and a dynamic campus event communication system. They look at 3 separate builds, but they all run the same offense. Our relationship is stored, configurable joins retrieve the context, exports simplify decisions, liquid logic or liquid markup, and content blocks turn it into a message. As you watch, pay attention to 3 things. First, where does the relationship live? Second, how the communication retrieves it. Third, what the system does when the expected data is missing. This was recorded as a rehearsal, so you're getting the complete session before the final presentation. Let's go to the tape. Stop copy pasting and start relating, using related records as a communication logic layer. The message works when the system understands the relationship. So I am recording this as part of the Innovation Forge podcast. You can watch along now or with the Slate Presents series from Technolutions. You can email me here if you have any questions or want additional information about related records in Slate. So, why this theme works? Because it's really a novel shared activity can be more relational than a generic and nice moment. Systems can actually communicate better when they understand who is connected to whom. And the presentation goal today is to have and build this reusable Slate pattern shown through a human frame, because relationships are built through context, attention, and shared experience. Because at the end of the day, a relationship is specific, and a good Slate build should be specific too. So, today's webinar is a technical story, but it's carried by one relationship idea. This is not 3 separate tricks. It's one architecture used in 3 different ways. So we're going to talk about a clear mental model for related records in Slate, 3 working patterns for tour guides, school visits, and campus events. This is just a practical method for joining data, selecting content, testing branches, and building safe fallbacks. And by the end of the session today, you should be able to identify one relationship in your process and turn it into reusable communication logic. So let's follow the relationship first. For every example, we're going to ask what 2 records are connected, where does that connection live, what information does the message need, what decision should Slate make, and what happens when the data is missing. So, relationship, retrieval, decision, message. Let's go for takeoff. So, the copy-paste trap. Most communication systems fail at the relationship layer. You get this template sprawl, which makes even the event edits risky in between events. Or maybe the staff voice. It just gets flattened to this generic one-size-fits-all language. Or the relationship context actually stays trapped in the fields or out of system altogether. And the manual follow-up depends on memory and time. 2 things I am always very short on. So we know that the system has data, but the messaging fails when it doesn't understand the relationship. So, the relationship logic pattern. Related records are able to hold context, and the configurable joins is going to retrieve it, and the merge logic speaks with it. So we need to know what the relationship context is for our 3 different projects, what the configurable joins process is, how to build the exports, adding in the liquid logic, and then getting that final rendered message. Now, if you've seen my technical build on this project, the RARE, Related Automation and Relationship Engine, a lot of this is new. We're just talking more broadly about those 3 projects. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I think it's like 75 minutes of me actually going through and building these different projects live. And really, the thing to remember here is this is 3 proofs of the same pattern. We're going to change the relationship, but we're actually going to keep the architecture. So first up, we have tour guides. So this is allowing us to have the student voice in our emails. Then there's the high school visits, which allows us to have our counselor voice. And then campus events, which gives us our operations voice. Doesn't sound as exciting, but it's one of my favorite parts of this broader set of projects. Because the projects change, but the actual relationship logic stays the same across all of them. So let's talk a little bit more about the shared architecture. Since the same structure sits under all 3 builds, whether that's talking about events and form responses, the related record context, configurable join paths and exports, content decisions, and message outputs. Relating starts with the context, not just the Slate template. So the build now. Each project can be explained with the same sequence. We're going to always be defining the relationship. We're going to create or reuse a data set. We're going to attach a record. We're going to build joins and exports. We're going to write that modular copy. And of course, we need to test every branch. These are admittedly complicated and complex builds, and there's always those onesies and twosies that might get a little weird. But we're going to build one clear pattern, and then we're going to reuse it across the projects. So let's talk a little bit more about when this related records are the right tool. We're going to use this when the relationship changes the message going out. So this could be like one event points to a person, office, or detail. The sender voice depends on a relationship or a situation, or the same template needs different instructions. We can use plain fields when the value belongs directly on the event, the detail is stable for every attendee, or just future reuse is unlikely. Or we can just use separate templates even when the audience and the event is meaningfully different, the timing is unrelated, or the owner needs full control. This does give you drastically more power to reduce the number of templates as you can start programming in this context through related events and related records. So, rule of thumb, does another relationship need to shape this message? If yes, related records is a great way to explore those options. So we're going to follow one relationship here through Slate. So one visitor, one event, one related guide, one rendered message. So we have our visitor who is going to register. So they're going to create a form response that creates the source row that we're going to send the message based off of. Then the visitor attends. That attendance is going to qualify them as a recipient. So whether this is through the template communications or a standalone deliver. The event will have a guide. The relationship is attached to the event. In this case, the student signs up through an umbrella event, and the related event is what's going to have the specific guide that they communicated with and went on the tour with. And the join finds the guide, because we're going to build configurable joins to retrieve the right row. And this could be even if you have multiple types of related records associated with that event. Maybe it's a running tour with a specific guide. We're going to filter to the right data set to make sure that we're retrieving the right piece here. Field joins pull the story. So this could be things like major, advice from the tour guide, interests, experiences. These all become exports in our recipient list to drive the text, add liquid markup. We're going to have exports actually compare. So we're going to create flags that turn the raw values into simple decisions. This could be the majors equaling, like the tour guide major equals the attendee major or not. Liquid chooses the copy, so the right paragraph renders for that student, and then the email sends. So the message sounds specific because the relationship was found and the message was built based on that relationship. And this is, I feel like, a huge process improvement just because the related record process adds personalization at scale. So, project 1, tour guides. The easiest way to see the value is a message from the person the visitor actually met. So a tour guide dataset stores voice and experience. The guide is attached to the event as a related record, and the email compares guide data to visitor data. The guide here is the relationship, and the email is our outcome. So We're going to start with a student worker data set, and then we're going to capture fields that we're going to use in the email later. So you might already have a student worker data set, and maybe you just need to add some additional fields to capture the data that's going to help you build this email. So you're going to use fields for the topics that need matching, collect information with Slate forms. You're going to ask student workers for a reusable first-person copy, and you're going to store experiences that can become message branches. So here we just have a couple of screenshots, like club sports, advice, scholar program, their name, stuff like that. The data set itself is the voice bank. So collecting tour guide information, a well-populated tour guide data set gives more opportunities for meaningful connections and relationship building. So you're going to codify open text and selectable data. You're going to embed these merge fields and text directly into the emails, but you're also going to write logic and match against that data in the exports to dynamically display the relevant text. And this is the moment where the relationship becomes possible in Slate. Now we're attaching the guide to the event. The related record gives the message a person to relate through. So we're going to add the guide as a related record to the event. Again, it doesn't have to be the umbrella event that the student's signing up for. This is a related event that they're signing up for in our umbrella campus visit. And we're going to use the event relationship to later shape the communications that the attendee gets. And this is the moment that the relationship becomes available in Slate. So, recipient logic starts with attendance. Then the attendee and the guide relationship controls who the message comes from and what it says. So the event relationship is required before sending. The attendee record supplies the student data for comparisons, and the related record supplies the intersection of the relationship. Attendance actually is what's going to be making the start of the send, and relationship context shapes it. So, step 1. The join has to find the person. The first job is proving Slate reached the correct related record row. So we're going from the form response to our umbrella event. The umbrella event, we're going then to our related event. Then we're going to our related record. And then we're pulling in the actual tour guide data. This is a lot of joins, so definitely want to do some testing. And first prove that Slate is finding the right row. And then ask the row for those story fields that we're pulling in. So, join from the response to event to guide. The first join retrieves the correct related person. So we're starting from the form response, joining to the event that owns that form response, joining to the related event that keeps the tour guide data, joining related records for the tour guide data set, and we're filtering to the right data set when several related records exist. So again, maybe I have a related record saying, hey, park in this parking lot, check in at this building, this is the tour guide, this is the type of tour you're going on. So we're having all these different related records on the event, and we're specifying, you can see here in this join, we're joining to the tour guide, and we're filtering that related record to which data set we're working with. So now, every reusable or every usable field gets its own join. This, I will fully admit, is tedious once, but then it's powerful every time after that. The related row alone does not expose every field to your tour guide data set. You have to join to the field values for each data point you need. Definitely name each join here with kind of your copy decision in mind. So you can build this once, you can suitcase it later. And I'll have suitcases at the end of the session here with just kind of like starter delivers for this project and others. So you can see here, I'm labeling this tour guide field dash major, and I'm filtering it to that field values ID to what the field key is. Now these field joins are the price of the reusable personalization. So like I said, it's a little bit of a hassle to build and lift that first time. But you get this really broad spectrum of data and information that you're bringing into these messages then. So for comparing attendee and the guide data, we're building relationship we're building the relationship while driving logic and text in the email. So the next comparison filters, we're going to nest the comparison filters inside the existence export. So you can see here we have a screenshot. So if the attendee major equals the guest major, then the Slate exports a 1, else 0. And that shouldn't be attendee major equal guest major. That should be tour guide major equals our attendee major. And then we're going to coalesce. We can also coalesce the exports of the first field with data present. So maybe your institutional data for your prospective students, you have maybe like a final major once the student applies, you have an application major, and then an initial application piece, and maybe you have academic interest before the major comes in. So we're adding a coalesce export here. So if they have a final major, that's what we're using for our comparison between the tour guide and the attendee. If they don't have a final major value, then it looks at that application major. If they don't have that, then it pulls in their academic interest. If there's a chance that students, whether your tour guide or your attendees, might not have this information, you can just build in a fallback static value. We'll go over that more in one of the future exports we build. So yeah, we just want to make sure the most relevant, up-to-date data is used, but because non-applicants are going to be going on your event, you want to make sure you're having a full spectrum of available academic interest fields. So we're coding this existence exports consistently across Slate. Is a very huge marquee flashing lights moment. So it doesn't matter if you're using like 1, 0, yes, no, yn, whatever gives you consistency across your instance of Slate is what I would recommend that you use. That makes all of these projects and liquid markup and content blocks and for loops, all of that kind of stuff becomes so much easier to replicate across your instance of Slate as long if you're using consistent expected values. I like 1, 0s, just like a nice binary, but whatever your institution wants to use is what I would recommend keeping consistent. So in this instance, if the student major, the tour guide major, and the prospective student major is the same, our recipient list is going to return a 1. If they're different, they're going to get a 0, and we can write liquid markup off of that. Step 2, field joins find the actual story. So the related row tells you who. The field joins tell you what they can say. So this is like the tour guide major. We're going to use this for major information in same school copy. Guide residents for campus life branches narrative. Guide advice. You could use this if the actual matching signals might be weak or if you're building a broader drip campaign. And guide activity, again, just used for involvement copy. So the naming rules, name the joins by the copy decision they support. And when I say copy, I just mean that like the marketing term of like content, text. So you can export the raw values first, and then you can build these flags second that are going to drive your email. So export comparisons and simplification. The email should make simple decisions even when the path itself is complex. So we're going to create flags for shared major, program, geography, or activity. Use 1s and 0s consistently across projects, or if your instance is a yes, no, yn, whatever that might be. And we're going to coalesce related topics into one best available talking point. And this helps protect the copy when some data is missing or you want to rank your talking points. So right here we have a coalesce. So again, if that top export is blank, it'll check down to the next one, then the next one, then the next one. So it gives us a priority ranking of what we want the talking point to be in this paragraph. And if they're all blank, then we are just generically telling it to pull the class content block. So conditional copy produces different messages. The logic selects the right paragraph for each visitor. So shared major gets one paragraph, different major gets a collaboration paragraph, and fallbacks protect the message when data is missing. So the logic itself is technical, but the output should sound like a person talking to another person. This is a very casual conversation. Anytime that we're having this kind of relationship building stuff, especially when it's in the student voice, it should sound very conversational, very personal, not overly stuffy or professional. So the decision table behind the email. A readable table is often a lot clearer than talking through really nested conditions in the HTML or all those little yellow liquid markup pieces. So build the table before you build the liquid markup, and this table then becomes your content map. So you can see, I'm not going to go into that much detail, but you can see what is the signal that we have available to us. So this could be the tour guide and the attendee have the same major, or they come from the same geography, they have shared experiences, maybe it's a weak match on those pieces, or the tour guide itself is missing. So then you want to start coding in what is the Slate action. So you're going to show the shared major paragraph. You're going to then present maybe a general guide note instead of this really complex relationship pieces that just isn't really there for this particular combination of student and tour guide. Or maybe you're just building in these safe fallbacks or suppressing that email altogether. And you get this very human result. The visitor is going to feel very recognized. We're keeping it warm, even if we don't have our best foot forward on being able to do all these matches of same major, same geography, because a lot of your attendees aren't going to be a perfect one-on-one match with your tour guide. And you're also avoiding really odd sounding emails if you are writing in the correct suppressions and fallbacks. So what the student sees. So it is the same build, but different copy paths. So the visitor sees a normal message, the guide voice stays specific, the branch logic stays hidden, that attendee guide major match versus different majors, you can see here is just a quick example of what that could look like. In our example here to the left, we see the tour guide themselves and the attendee that is going on the event. They have the same major, so you get them talking about that major. But then we see like, oh, okay, so the check down is for a prospective student who doesn't match major with the tour guide. It references the tour guide's major and how that relates to the attendee's major. So maybe there is some interesting connections and collaborations that these majors do together. Or maybe it's just, hey, it's cool. We have your major here. They do a lot of cool stuff. So the student experiences the relationship, not the mechanism behind it. So I like having a nice full 3 email sequence for this. So the same relationship can support more than just one message, especially as you build out more data and collect more data on your tour guides and have more data on your attendees. So that email one, maybe it's same day, next day, really soon, just to be fresh of like, oh, I remember the tour guide's name that I went to when I went to the institution. The purpose of this first email is to really focus on the guide voice and the strongest matches that the prospective student and the tour guide have. So the decision here is just having that best shared signal. But for email 2, maybe it's a couple days after the event, you're starting to focus more on campus life or the academic angle of the institution. So the decision point here is just what is our next strongest useful topic that we can feature in this email. And then email 3, maybe this is later down in the visitor path, gives them that next best action, CTA, like, oh, maybe this is a nice check-in when you start getting towards that application deadline, or just a little bit later in the application cycle, or maybe it's, hey, visit again, or offer virtual visit opportunities, or just asking them a question, getting them to engage via email and creating a back and forth that just builds upon the relationship. So the payoff here is that the sequence should feel like follow through and avoid repetition. You don't want to just harp on the same things for 5 different emails from the student voice. Then you're just creating noise. You want to be building the relationship here and creating an avenue that the prospective student can explore your institution and the relationships with it. So, tour guide lessons. The first proof gives us the reusable moves. Relationship first, the guide's attached to the event. Data second, fields become decision points. And then the copy third. You have these modular paragraphs that still read as one cohesive message, no matter what logic is triggering, what information is being pulled or not pulled. So the student voice proves the pattern because the relationship here is really obvious. Project 2, high school visits. The system should remember who met whom with these events. So this is actually a standalone deliver. It's sending to the specific school contact, and it uses the counselor tied to the visit, and it pulls staff voice through content blocks and event nodes. But I think content blocks is the kind of bigger feature here. And so a staff relationship can be automated without flattening the voice across your staff. So the high school visit relationship model. The message is sent to the person the counselor actually interacted with. If you have your organizations in Slate, you probably have 1, 5, 10 organizational contacts associated with your different organizations. So we're adding as a related record the person that the admission officer is actually in contact with, maybe who they're meeting with while they're there. And again, you could have multiple related records here, and it would just send to multiple people. So we're looking at the school organization, the school contact, the visit event, and focusing on this counselor voice. The contact and the visit need to point to the same school. I'm doing this form by related records and form by location record. Having this allows Slate to triangulate and skip issues with maybe one person being listed as organization contacts for multiple organizations, or just choosing the wrong person, wrong name for the wrong event. So you don't have to, this build doesn't have to be as complex as I built it here, but for my own sanity, I like a little bit of safety. So we're going to guardrail the joins. We talked about that a little bit in the last slide, because personalization scales only when wrong sends are hard to make. So the contact belongs to the same school. The visit is recent. Again, you don't want to send this to a big backlog of events that happened last year. The contact is active, so you're keeping that fresh information live. And the email address exists because you don't want to be just sending bouncing emails for no reason. And I just really think that a personalized email to the wrong person is worse than a generic one. So we have to make sure that we're doing a good job keeping these straight. So high school visit safety check. So it's nice having a written checklist. It helps ensure emails will send smoothly. So check that the contact belongs to the same school, that the event is happening, the visit's recent, keeping things timely, contact is active, the visit user exists, content block exists. Again, building into a default content block. Not that the keys content block is a default, but that you have a code in your content block that acts as the default, and then emails exist. So a safety checklist helps prevent that errant logic, bad sends, and confusion. So counselor voice lives in content blocks largely in this project. So the build uses the staff written paragraph based on the visit user. So this is user 1 of your event, which is your admission officer. Or you could do related records if you're using your user 1 for like your event staff or anything like that. It doesn't matter. The visit user identifies the counselor. A naming convention selects the right greeting. Standard content follows after that voice block. So there is generic content in the email, like here's the view book, here's this link, here's that link, stuff like that. That's standard across the email, but we're adding that counselor voice up top. So staff can update the reusable paragraph whenever they want. And so we're storing the voice once and we're letting the context pick it repeatedly. So how that content block key is actually built and that code is built. So we have a small naming system that lets the visit user select the right counselor paragraph. So we have our content block key, which is the collection of the different codes. We have the use case code. So inside this content block key, we have counselor voice stuff for multiple projects. So the actual use case is part of the name of the code. So we have our staff code, so our staff name, user ID, however you're storing that. And that gives you your counselor paragraph. So you can see here, the content block key is counselor_greeting. The use code here is high school visit org contact. The visit user is Dysart, and then the block key or code, high school visit voice Dysart. However the naming convention you want it to be. So use predictable names. Keep the block small. Store staff voice in one editable content block, and add a default voice for missing codes. And again, that's just like a high school visit voice default. I'm not using the actual block keys default, because then that would restrict this content block key to be only for this project. For content roles though, so content block produces personalized modular content, and then actually pulling this in the recipient list, we're just adding an export that pulls the content block formatting and customization together. It establishes the general code with static text, dynamically pulls in the event user to customize the introduction, and we're just adding the export name to the content block in the email body. So, event note context. The counselors can also add event-specific text that is merged into the email. So the counselor adds open text through the event's event note. That export is the actual. So this is a screenshot of the export, and that just pulls in the text value from that event note. And then I would just recommend adding some liquid markup to hide the merge field and any line breaks. So that way you're not getting any kind of 2-3 line breaks, assuming that there might be liquid markup. And generally speaking, event notes can be a really good way to pilot this type of project in general before you start building a full related records process. So then we start rendering the counselor outcome here, this email. Relationship-specific message for the school contact. The recipient comes from the organization contact, added as a related record. The sender voice comes from the event counselor, and the message content can branch by visit type or persona. And the contact receives useful follow-up from the person they actually met, and it actually sounds like it's from the person they met. So just some lessons. The pattern here shifts from the student voice to staff relationship management. So matching the recipient, match the sender voice, match the content. It's the same structure that's working when the relationship is staff to contact versus tour guide to prospective student. So, project 3, campus events. The event details can become relationship context as well. So we have our umbrella event template communications. The event details become related records, related events to determine the instructions, and templates stay stable while the logistics can change. Because the operations voice is still a relationship with the attendee. So, why event templates can get messy. There's oftentimes small logistical differences that create a lot of recurring risk. So you might have the same event type, but different parking locations. Might be the same day, but different check-in paths depending on the 10 a.m. versus the 1 p.m. Weather or construction changes need fast updates or cancellations that are specific to what is happening, and template edits become operational risk. So the template should stay stable, and the details should change safely. You're not having to Thursday after 8 p.m. change it for the next time this template communication goes out on Friday morning. So, creating the event details dataset. One dataset can represent parking, check-in, updates, special instructions. Use a readable name that maps to a content block key. Attach detail records to the event that owns the logistics. So again, students are signing up through that umbrella event, but it's the related events that likely have the logistic changes or differences. Oftentimes. There are, of course, umbrella events that just might also have those phases. So we're letting the umbrella communication retrieve those details later, regardless of which event houses them. So controlled inputs here really matter. A misspelled detail category will break the retrieval since it's a content block. And umbrella events inherit this context. So a visit registration can retrieve details from the selected session or activity, We're going to match the related event to the same day, pull the relevant detail record from the event, and render the correct instructions inside the umbrella communications. The chosen activity here carries the details that the attendee actually needs. So, the nested event path. The registration owns the attendee, and the selected event owns the details. So we're going from campus visit registration to the registered related event, to the related record, to the copy in the content block. So since the umbrella event owns the registration and comms, the registered related event owns the details, the related record pulls the content block adds the instructions, and the template comms only render what it receives. So this is the key move for reducing that event template sprawl. You don't need a campus visit, academic building, campus visit, admissions office. You can start consolidating all of your templates into what makes sense for the student experience, not just what makes sense for the template communications. So, join path reaches through the related event. So we're retrieving the detail record attached to the selected session or activity related event. So we're joining from the recipient to the umbrella form, and when I say recipient, just the form response, to the umbrella form, the join to the related event response, so usually same day, in a specific template, filter to the correct related event template, join to the event detail related record. When there are several related events that exist, sorting and filtering really matters here. And then these content blocks turn values into directions. So our retrieved value becomes clear, attendee facing text. We're looking for a retrieved value that supplies the content block code. The content block stores the actual directions in a single template, can render many different event scenarios. So you can see here we have our check-in location, and then we're pulling in the content block based off of our template communications, edit conditions, exports. So we have our check-in, we have our parking, and then we have that cross tab of this is how you get from this parking location to this check-in location. So the event team, all they have to do is change the related records, and the template just keeps doing its job. So, use related records as send criteria. Some messages should send only when a specific event detail exists using conditions filters. So maybe this is sending a waiver only when a related event with a specific related record is attached or registered for. Maybe, again, like a running tour needs a special waiver. Send a parking update, weather update, cancellation, only when the event has that related record. And again, you can add that context. We are canceling events because it's snowing. We're canceling this event because weather, construction, whatever it might be, World Cup, smoke coming in from Canada, whatever those pieces might be that are causing you to cancel the event. It's not just a generic, hey, we canceled, and then we're going to send you a follow-up text message with the specifics. You're just building this all right inside of the event template communications. So these related records can decide what the email says and whether it even sends. So use related records to pull in content blocks. Some messages need that dynamic text based on specific details. So an umbrella event contains comms in the main registration, template comms, the join to the related event on the same day, join to that event's event details record, and then we're going to render the value to pull into the correct content block. So this is just an example of those nested configurable joins pulls. And you can see here for check-in, that data set just always starts with the word check-in. So check-in and parking are in the same event details data set, but we are filtering on the correct type of event details there. So design fallback values. We're going to build the defaults and the fallback values into the exports. So we're going to design a default content block, code, email, and condition export for your most common state. So you don't have to add a related record on every single event. And this also acts as a fallback, which ensures text if staff forgot to add a related record or there's just a technical error. And we're going to use those coalesce exports to pull in this default / fallback text. And this default fallback text is in the exports instead of the content block default, which gives you more flexibility in the content block key. So where this field fights back. The technical trust comes from showing what breaks and how you protect against it. So there might be several related records, or the wrong data set is retrieved. Maybe the guide exists, but the field value is missing. 2 related events occur on the same day. The content block key does not match the retrieved value. Old school visits become eligible for sends. The event team skips the required detail records. The copy renders cleanly, but the voice sounds odd when you might assume most of the time this paragraph will be entered, but that gets skipped for a few folks and now it just doesn't read well. So the build should always be able to fail safely. It should have suppressions, fallbacks, and just be able to expose the missing setup to staff before you go live. So there's a few steps to debug these kinds of things. You got to check the relationship path before rewriting the copy, because these configurable joins are long and complex sometimes. So I won't go through all of this. This is just a nice little checklist. Most fixes, though, you'll probably have to happen before the liquid markup. So prove that the data path exists first before you start pondering into the HTML. So implementation order. Build one relationship pattern before scaling into all 3 projects. Find a project that you have. Could be one of these 3, could be something else at your institution. You want to define that relationship, create or reuse a data set, attach the record, build joins and exports, write the modular copy. Always test every possible branch that you might be seeing. So just start with one relationship and then reuse that pattern. And you could use this as a little get started to build your own relationship pattern. Pick one recurring message that changes because of one person, event, or detail. And the goal is to have that one relationship, one clean path, and one message that feels specific. Takeaways and resources. The relationship context is the engineer. The communications are the output. We're using related records to preserve the relationship behind the interaction. And we're using configurable joins to make the relationship available to the message. We're using exports and liquid logic to decide what to say in the emails, and using content blocks to keep copy reusable and editable across emails. So this here is a suitcase, so you can build your next project faster. You can also suitcase across your projects. This one also has the email HTML, the recipient lists, PowerPoint sessions of this session, and the tour guide autoresponder show and tell I did earlier. There's also a 75-minute live technical build of the configurable joins and liquid markup, and rehearsal videos. So just start with one relationship, build the logic once, and reuse the pattern.